Hey everybody, it's Spicy Guy. So recently I did a video about Trayvon Martin and Kendrick Johnson, which led to a very deep comment in my comment section. And basically the person was saying that they're very educated about the organ life, and they couldn't understand why people would take organs from an already transitioned body when the organs wouldn't be viable for transplants. Well, I had already done the research. I just wasn't sure I wanted to do this video. But once he asked that question, I figured it had to be done. So this video is basically to show you what could possibly be happening to organs that come up missing out of transition bodies, even if they're not viable for transplant. But before we get started, please be sure to hit that thumbs up and make sure to share this video so we can get the word out about what's happening to the body parts and organs of our young people. And if you're new to my channel, make sure you hit subscribe and go ahead and hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I drop a new video about deep things like this. Let's get to the content.
Top story, a grisly investigation centered on a body donation business, and it's taking some new twists tonight.
Yeah, Air 15 was over this latest Valley raid, and yet another day of investigators dressed in hazmat suits removing evidence from the Biological Resource Center, and some of that evidence coming out on gurneys. It is official. Bodies are coming out of that building.
We also know body parts were removed in a similar federal raid in Detroit. That was back in December, and trust us, this story is about to be taken to another level.
With state officials promised their investigation would be done in 2 weeks in connection with the body parts broker in Detroit, they've taken action in just 1 week. They've suspended the license of the questionable body broker who has been doing business.
Carolyn, we found state officials knew about this case for almost 2 years and did nothing.
You can go find out what the heck he is doing, and that wasn't done. Right?
Did we do something 2 years ago? No, we didn't. Are we doing an investigation now? Yes, we are.
You may recall the feds raided his warehouse on Detroit's east side in December. Sources telling us they removed body parts of more than 1,000 people. Here is that raid. And the families who donated their bodies to science had no idea that they would end up in the shabby warehouse on Detroit's east side. The feds also expanded their investigation across the country, hitting a body donation center in Arizona last month.
Elam Pruitt was only trying to honor her mother's last wishes by donating her remains to medical science.
I would have never donated her body for science if I had known this was what really went on.
And to make matters worse, she's not even sure whose cremated remains she got back. Erica's mother, Linda, died of cancer at home, surrounded by family. But at the time, Erica, an only child, could not afford a funeral and cremation. That's when she heard about the Biological Resource Center of Illinois.
They offered assistance in that way by providing us with cremation and an urn if we would agree to donate her remains for scientific research. It seemed like a viable solution. I know my mom would have wanted me to use her to help others.
Erica says the company was clear on how her mother's remains were used for research.
It was a pretty detailed letter as to how they used her for training or research, that kind of thing.
But soon after receiving her mother's ashes, she catches a story about the Biological Resource Center on the news. And the news is grim. Following up on an investigation, FBI agents raid the company's headquarters in Chicago. About the same time, they also raid the Biological Resource Center of Arizona in Phoenix. The two businesses have the same name and the same function, but are separately owned. And what agents allegedly find in both places is too horrific to show on national television or anywhere.
There's allegations that the bodies were hacked apart with a chainsaw. There's allegations that human heads were stored on top of each other without any protection in between the various layers. They were just stacked.
Attorney Brian Kabatek is investigating the claims of distraught families who handed over the remains of their loved ones to the centers in Chicago and Arizona.
The investigation shows that the bodies were dismembered, they were sold in pieces, they were sold for a profit, they were taken, and in some cases where the families hadn't authorized it, they were used for testing in crashes of automobiles.
And that includes testing by the military. Extreme testing, as in explosives.
What's the worst that you think happened here?
Well, I think the worst that happened is, in some cases, bodies were blown up or ballistic testing was used.
Kabatek says in many cases, bodies were cut up and sold in pieces, making it impossible to track down and return the full cremated remains as promised to the families by Biological Resource Center.
They didn't completely ever disclose to the people that the body parts were being sold through brokers to different locations. In some cases, the body parts were never reunited, and the cremated remains that were given to the family members may not be the cremated remains of their loved one. Every family member was told that their loved one was going to be treated with dignity. That just doesn't sound like dignity to us.
The kind of research that's done for medical science on cadavers and human body parts isn't going to be nice or pleasant. It's going to be very ugly. Is that what you have the problem with, or?
Well, dignity may include the fact that the body's going to be, operated on or tested by doctors or medical students or for medical purposes. I don't think you necessarily think that grandma's head's going to be sawed off.
The main motive, Kabatek says, is profit.
Do you have any kind of a dollar value on this?
I mean, the bodies can be worth anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 on the market, legally sold. And the bodies are generally worth more dismembered than as an entire cadaver.
Civil suits allege the Biological Resource Center of Illinois also lied to family members like Erica Elam Pruitt by saying remains would not be sold, and then made a profit doing exactly that.
Jacob Colton was like a lot of people who moved to Colorado, young and loved the outdoors.
I trusted, their website.
This family friend who was handling cremation arrangements said since Heritage appeared local, it was an easy call. Family owned and operated for over 2 decades. Heritage first sent the Colton family invoices misspelling Jake's name. Then they sent invoices saying the deceased was the Williams family. Then they sent the family an invoice for cremation services for Sarah White, who Jake's family never even heard of.
They stated clearly in their advertising that they were a locally owned in Boulder, family-run business.
But we found out there's really not much local about them. When we searched cremation services in Memphis, the exact same page popped up. Same for Minneapolis, same web page, same local appearance. Heritage Cremation isn't really local. They're a company based in Florida that then subcontracts out to local cremation services. They're more like body brokers.
That's the ultimate scam.
One hurtful mistake after another. The worst when the family traveled to Boulder believing Boulder's most trusted cremation service had an office here and they could retrieve Jake's ashes.
When I made contact with her on Monday, she acknowledged that they had no idea where Jake's body was.
All that led Jake's family to file a complaint against Heritage Cremation, and they're not alone. We found 5 complaints filed with Colorado funeral authorities against Heritage Cremation in 2015, more than any other cremation company.
Now, to date, there have been a half-dozen complaints filed against Heritage Cremation since 2015, but the state agency that oversees cremations hasn't resolved a single complaint in almost 2 years now.
Could be a separate investigation on that agency.
Well, we have a lot of questions. We asked them to do an interview on camera and explain why they hadn't resolved any of these complaints. They said no on-camera interview.
Calling the business willfully dishonest, the state of Colorado has now revoked the license of a cremation company we've been investigating. CBS 4 investigator Brian Moss says the state verified our reporting on Heritage Cremation. It shut the company down in December, but Brian tells us tonight it hasn't buried Heritage Cremation just yet.
When her beloved grandmother died of breast cancer, Deanna Jackson searched the internet and signed up with Heritage Cremation Providers. Their webpage suggested they were local. When she learned Heritage was nothing more than a cremation middleman with no local presence, she tried to get her money and her grandmother's body back, but says the company refused to reveal where her grandmother's remains were.
But ultimately, they didn't give me the name of the funeral home.
They wouldn't tell you where your grandma was?
Nope.
In revoking their license, the state of Colorado found the company has repeatedly withheld bodies until loved ones coughed up more money. And in putting them out of business, Colorado investigators verified what we reported. Heritage has no facilities and no employees in Colorado to do cremations. They hire other companies to do the work. They are essentially body brokers with a website.
However, you still want to treat it with a little bit of respect. That's why I'm all for cremation, man. But this one's kind of creepy. Colorado shuts down funeral home operated by body parts broker. Colorado officials indefinitely shut down a funeral home and crematory this week of a woman who runs as a side business selling donated body parts from the same building. That's creepy, and that's this woman right here. So in its order issued Monday, the State Office of Funeral Home and Crematory Registration suspended operations at Sunset Mesa Funeral Directors after saying that cremated remains returned to one donor were analyzed by the family and found to be concrete, not human ashes. You can tell the difference between human ashes and concrete. I mean, who's going to open it up and look inside, right? Who's going to? I mean, realistically, this woman, Megan Hess here. Okay, this is her right here with her Beverly Goldberg, circa 1985 hair. Now, in its order, the Colorado Department, a division of the state's Department of Regulatory Agencies, found that Hess neglected to maintain required cremation records for the past 5 years and final disposition records of the deceased for at least 7 years. Sunset Mesa also disposed of bodies before obtaining the necessary permits. That's not good. In last month's story by Reuters, former employees described how bodies donated to donor services were dismembered and sold. The so-called body broker business operated out of the same building. Oh man, that's fucking horrible. No federal law governs the sales of cadavers or body parts and use for use in research or education, and few state laws, including those in Colorado, provide any oversight.
About 20,000 people call Montrose home.
580 KUBC, good morning.
A city proud of its history. A community struggling to understand the stories from inside this former funeral home. The accusations about what happened inside a back room.
I go to sleep with the visions of him being dismembered with a power saw.
Ruthie Pettyjohn now lives with the memory of what happened to the body of her 26-year-old son, Brian.
But they desecrated his little body. Just cut him up in pieces and sent him all over the place.
It's worse than his death, to be truthful.
Like many, Connie Hansen found out about her son, Frederick, during a phone call from the FBI.
And she said, well, his head was sent so-and-so, and his 2 shoulders went somewhere else, and 1 elbow to the fingertip went somewhere. I said, I don't want to hear anymore.
I've been violated. My mother and my mother's body's been desecrated.
Alina Holloman now deals with the guilt of knowing details of what happened to her mom's body.
How many of you were not told that she was going to sell your loved one's body?
They all came to voice their frustrations.
No discussion about selling body parts.
None.
No.
Knowing they never agreed to let this funeral director dismember the bodies, struggling with claims she created product with a power saw, and angry that she ultimately profited from the sale of arms, legs, heads, torsos, even bodies. Megan Hess, along with her mom and dad, are all named in this lawsuit, all accused of dismembering cadavers with a power saw and stacking body parts inside coolers. The lawsuit claims the 3 sold torsos for $1,000, a pelvis with upper legs for $1,200, heads went for $500, and $250 for a knee. Prices at significantly discounted rates compared to other body brokers, and the lawsuit estimates a $40,000 monthly income.
But this body broker thing was going bigger and bigger and bigger, and its tentacles go throughout not only the country, but the world.
These people deserve to know why their loved ones were stolen from them and they were given back
dry cement or sand and told this was your loved one's ashes.
What did the test say?
They came back non-human.
Wasn't Brian.
Wasn't Brian.
The FBI has hired a lab to test the cremains given to Ruthie and many other families.
You know, I just wasn't expecting to find stuff like this. There's a lot of wire.
Lab reports have informed families that instead of cremains, their cherished boxes contain cement, sand, and other non-human particles. Connie's included wires and what appear to be old batteries.
I know these are not his ashes because his body parts went all over the country.
Donating your body to science has become a popular way to help medical researchers cure diseases. Trained doctors even educate scientists.
And the families of some donors are getting a shock when they find out what really happened to their loved ones.
I'm talking about something called non-transplant anatomical donation organizations, otherwise known as body brokers. The sale of body parts.
It's certainly more widespread than I think the average person would imagine.
Where these body brokers get a hold of human remains is creating some debate across the country because they rely on donors, and some donor families say they did not understand where their loved ones were going. Cody Saunders was born with a rare disease, endured dozens of surgeries, and died at age 24.
We couldn't afford a burial for Cody.
Cody's mom, Angie, says someone told her about a company that could help. Restore Life USA offered to handle all of the expenses in exchange for using some of Cody's body for medical research. The family would receive his cremated remains within 30 days. What do you remember about what they told you about what they were going to do with him?
All I remember is they were supposed to take skin samples. Maybe they could figure out that what caused this disease.
What ended up happening with Cody?
I had him chopped up in 30 minutes, as I would put it. I mean, they took his heart, they sold his clavicle spine, and then they make money off of my child, and that's just wrong.
Parts of Cody's body were sold into an online marketplace open to anyone with a credit card. When you agreed for them to be able to use him for medical science and to help other people, did you have any idea they would be selling his bones on the internet?
No. I mean, I gave them my child's body for research, just for stem cells, and they chopped them up like they did.
New horrifying details are coming out about what happened to bodies that were being tended to by the Sunset Mesa Funeral Director's home in Montrose. Sunset Mesa was shut down in March by the state after evidence surfaced that the owner, Megan Hess, may have been selling bodies and body parts without families' consent and giving those families bags of fake cremains. Hess also ran a body broker company out of the funeral home. Today, family members revealed the FBI told them that bodies and body parts were being shipped to facilities in Michigan, China, and Saudi Arabia.
I lost my husband June 17th of 2017. I know what body parts I will be getting back. They are in FBI evidence. He was dismembered and sold to an agency in Detroit.
And she died the 28th of December 2014. She was taken that day to Sunset Mesa. A couple weeks later, we got ashes of her. And the FBI just told me that her body had been embalmed and that she was shipped to somewhere in Michigan.
It's full of body parts, heads, bodies, and genitalia of different people sewn together and hung up on a wall.
Yeah, new gruesome details in a lawsuit against a body donation and tissue bank facility in Phoenix that was raided back in 2014.
In 2014, the FBI raided the Phoenix facility in hazmat suits as part of a multi-state investigation into the illegal trafficking and sale of human body parts. But for the first time, we're now able to see the testimony from one of the FBI agents who conducted the raid, and what he recounts is shocking. He said he found a cooler filled with male genitalia, a bucket of heads, arms, and legs, infected heads, and one of the most disturbing findings, called a morbid joke in the lawsuit, a small woman's head sewn onto a large male torso like Frankenstein and hung up on the wall. The lawsuit also says the bodies were cut up with chainsaws and bandsaws, and pools of human blood and bodily fluids were found on the floor of the freezer, with no identification tags on the bodies.
So after I finished that portion of my research, I had some major questions. The first question was, who are they selling these body parts to? And what the heck are they doing with them? Like, what would somebody want with body parts? My other main question was, where are the organs? How come nobody's mentioning the organs? Are the organs already gone before the body brokers get the bodies? Or are the body brokers in the funeral homes and all of these different entities, are they selling the organs too and nobody's just not talking about that part? Because the bottom line is this. By the time a body makes it to the mortuary or a body broker, it's too late to use the organs for transplant. So what are they doing with the organs? I'm going to show you what they're doing with the organs and the human body parts right now.
In this study, we created maps of the various human organs to understand their epigenomes, particularly what's called DNA methylation.
They all do different things. You know, your heart cells are different than your liver cells, are different than your lung cells, and on and on.
So basically, we collect a bunch of human tissues from 4 donors, and then we compare the DNA methylation in one tissue against the other, and try to profile all the variations across the tissue types we have and the donors we have.
So understanding the epigenome will help us to understand, for example, its role in cancer, which we know there is already an importance of epigenetic modifications in cancer.
Tissue engineering, also called regenerative medicine, refers to the attempt to create functional human tissue from cells in a laboratory. Its ultimate goal is to be a cure, not merely a treatment, by repairing or replacing tissues and organs that fail due to disease, genetic errors, congenital abnormalities, or traumatic injury. The cells can be directly harvested from the target organ, developed from precursor or stem cells, or taken from lines grown in the lab. Some examples of tissues and organs that have already been successfully tissue engineered and implanted in humans include bladders, small arteries, skin grafts, cartilage, and even a full trachea.
You may ask, how is this possible? But researchers claim to have found another organ inside the human body, and it's called the interstitium. A study published in Scientific Reports suggests the organ is actually a series of interconnected, fluid-filled compartments found throughout the body. Researchers believe this newfound organ might be your body's biggest and could shed new light on other diseases, including how cancer spreads.
People out there collect human body parts. People out there collect everything under the sun, including human body parts.
Universities, museums, and physicians are the most common buyers, but there are also private collectors who look for human bones.
Private people in their private homes having small and sometimes large collections of bones from human bodies.
This is Brian Grove for Reuters. We've spent months exploring an industry that many people may not understand. It's called whole body donation, and it involves acquiring, dissecting, and selling parts from bodies that have been donated to science. Mostly, these parts are used for medical training and education. One of the companies I visited is MD Global in Colorado. It's a small operation run by a father and daughter.
I feel like there has to be more of a generous the compassion for the corpse.
And I feel like that tendency to feel that way is being driven away. Say, look, just get the job done. It's just what a dead body, just chop it up, freeze it, send it out. I feel compassion is something that the industry is lacking tremendously. And I believe my daughter is the one that revived it. And I feel like the thrill is there again. It's like, yes, we're not making millions of dollars, and we don't want to make millions of dollars. We just want to produce a product that is reflective of what we feel inside. We want to make a difference.
And I want to warn you, what you're about to see in the next few minutes isn't for the faint of heart.
So that's the donor number,
That's the donor.
right? And then that's the tissue ID number. So that's that tag,
I see.
right?
So what's in here?
So this is just a recent donor waiting to get, it's waiting to get wrapped. So when we initially freeze, we freeze on a level surface, and then we don't wrap. So none of the wrapping gets stuck to the tissue when
I
it's
see.
freezing.
We'll show you. I see.
So we can show you, and we do actually have a table set up of internals in formaldehyde to show you.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, awesome.
Great. And when you say internals, you mean the organs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And like cancerous internals, so we'll show you
Wow.
those. So this is a brain,
Well, yeah, brain. I thought the
lung, and then that's where an aneurysm happened, right?
oh yeah, the dilatation of the aorta gets wider.
As long as humans keep dying and there's a need for human parts, people like the Poho Rileys can ply their trade.
So here's another sinus resection that we had a request for. So you can see the nose. So there's the tongue, the larynx. It's kind of hard to see now. It's not the best one, but it is one.
Yeah, so you said it's a sinus, so this is the nose, exactly. And then this is the tongue, and then trachea, and then this is the trach, yes. And trach with esophagus. Trach with esophagus.
So who would want this?
Somebody from the University of Colorado, a researcher there, is
I
doing
see.
some research.
I see. Okay. A lot of pharmaceutical companies doing work, various work. It would be either cancer, heart valves, liver disease, lung disease.
So people ask us to slice the brain.
So he slices these brains, and it's actually it really sucks, right? It's really difficult. Well, especially because it's fresh. Yes. Right. Fresh brain is very fresh, and it's very soft, so therefore it cuts something. So what I try to do sometimes is maybe just a small amount of freeze, just to give it more conformity to the brain, because otherwise it starts to sag.
That's a good piece.
Yeah, that's a great, yeah, see, this is a beautiful piece here.
Here's the odd thing about this business. It's illegal to buy and sell human tissue for transplantation and therapy. In other words, to be used in another living person. But it's not illegal to buy and sell body parts for research and education, because the laws are mostly silent on that subject. But the Poho Rileys and everyone else get around that gray area pretty easily in another way. They say they charge a fee to prepare and ship specimens, not for the part itself. I asked them how much they charge for a whole body.
So a whole body today, what do you charge?
I would say a range is about 2,000 to 3,000.
Head with brain.
You know,
The actual cost of a head?
you want like I
Of
don't
the
know,
actual, a number. Is it 4 or 5?
around.
Yeah, 4 or 500.
And the competition, is it price-based competition?
That too. So
That too.
industry has a lot to do with it. You know, if you know,
Plus,
but
the clients are always begging, can you reduce the cost? They're always asking for that particular facet.
we try to always discount if we can, though. You
Yes.
know, if we have a large number of specimens, we're gonna discount because we want to like provide these specimens. You know, like give some space for new donors to come in, right? So we try our best to already give discounts to try to really make sure we're getting as much tissue out to these research programs as possible.
And there you have it. If you think that a body found in the desert with no organs, or a body that's exhumed and found to be stuffed with newspapers where the organs should be, has no bearing on organ thieves and organ usages and like that, because you don't believe that these organs can be used to save human lives, think deeper. You have to think deeper. On the surface, it looks like people would steal organs to help someone who needs an organ. But if you think deeper, you can see, plain as day, that there are other uses for organs. And most of it is about research and collections. And that's the world we live in 2019. Spicey out.